Is that on tape?
Got it on tape.
I'm not gonna throw my good pen.
Welcome to lecture number 20
Go to
of
Charlotte.
Biblical Hebrew 2. We'll be studying tonight Cal Infinitive Construct. And can everybody see the presentation? Can you see through me? Okay, well maybe you should move to that table, to that chair right there.
That's
Will be probably better. Okay. In Hebrew, there are two types of infinitive forms. There's the infinitive construct, and there's the infinitive absolute. Infinitive construct and infinitive absolute. Infinitives are basically verbal nouns, and as such have features in common with both verbs and nouns. What is a verbal noun? Give me an example of infinitive.
To run.
To run. Okay.
I want to run.
How is it a noun?
Just running is an
That's
action.
something it has.
Well, how is it now?
That's something an object.
Because it's the object of
Well,
a verb. There's a
yeah,
verb.
and
I want.
is the verb, yeah.
So it's
Okay.
the object of a verb.
Okay.
So that's how it's a noun, but it's describing an action. It's an action noun.
What about running is good for you?
Running is, yeah.
That's a verbal form. Because infinitive is not purely a verb or purely a noun. It's just verbal noun. It's mixed with both.
Mm.
Okay? So, the infinitive construct. It can function much like the English infinitive, commonly translated with the preposition to plus a verb, as in to study or to learn. Okay? That means it can function much like, but not necessarily does so in all the instances. In this chapter, we will study both the form and the function of the Cal infinitive construct. Guess what the next chapter will be?
No.
Cal infinitive absolute. So that's why we'll study them separately from one another and try to see how they work with different types of verbs and pronominal suffixes. The form of the infinitive construct. If we talk about the form of the infinitive construct, we have to mention one thing. It is not inflected by person, gender, or number. Like the verb, or the verbs that we have learned. What is the noun inflected by? Is there an inflection of the noun? Person, gender, number, right?
Yeah.
So we don't have that in the infinitive. Although it's a verbal noun, we don't have that. There is one basic form and therefore no paradigm to memorize. Okay, I'm enjoying your enthusiasm about memorizing Hebrew paradigms. And that, of course, will be good for our future students watching to that tape. The form of the infinitive construct. Ketol. What does it look like? Is there anything similar to this form? Of course, we haven't learned participles yet. Participles have paradigms with vowel pattern o, e. Will be actually kotel instead of ketol. So the infinitive construct is almost the exact opposite, although not in every sense. We should note one important thing in regards to infinitive constructs. The infinitive construct form of the strong verb is identical to Cal imperative second masculine singular. So this will mess you up every time unless you will look at the context. And the only way you can determine translation within the context is if you would look at the sentence as at the number of logical units, like we have discussed today in class. This is the way you will find out what is the context of this infinitive or imperative within its clause, or within the sentence, or within the passage. Okay, and the context will determine whether it's an imperative or infinitive construct, because they will be identical. Next, cal infinitive construct with third hey verbs, as far as spelling goes. The infinitive construct form of a third hey ends in oth, Holenvav plus tau. These are the usual endings for the third hey verbs. Remember that the imperfect forms end in segol hey. The bet there is just for mater lecciones, for the matters of linguistics, just so that you'll see that there's preceding letter. Except in those forms with suffirmatives, which are suffixes, and the imperative form ends in sere hey, in second masculine singular. Okay, so we have already 3 different variations of endings in third hey verbs: oth, ech with segol, and ech with sere. Summary of a third hey verbal endings. If we look at the examples of these endings, we have segol hey on the actual verb or a word, let's say, will be yivne. So segol hey, I cannot mark segol with red because it doesn't allow me to do it on the computer without actually highlighting noon together. But actual ending is segol hey, not just hey. He will build, yivne. It's an example of the imperfect. Imperative with a sere hey will be bene, and then infinitive construct will have the ending of holum tau, will actually be benoth. So don't mix it up with banoth. It's benoth with shabbat. It's not daughters, it's something else. It's actually from the verb bana, to build, or infinitive will be actually to build. Okay, because how would we translate kal perfect? What is the lexical form of the Hebrew verb? What person, number, gender? Lexical form. How would you find the verb in a dictionary? He built. That's correct. So that's the only form where we actually come to the to build, to run, to do something. That's an infinitive construct form. It's not a lexical form of the verb. Okay. So if you look in the dictionary and it says bana means to build, it's actually wrong because it means he built.
Yeah, why did they do that?
Because we are so used to the English way of infinitives being our lexical forms. Cal infinitive construct with the first noon verbs. We have to recognize that there is such a thing as it's called diagnostical final tau on these verbs, and it is essential for identification of the verbal form and reconstruction of the verbal form. So if you see that tau at the end of the verb, at the end of the infinitive construct, you'll be able to distinguish that this is not part of the trilateral root system. It is actually a final tau which identifies this verb or verbal form as infinitive construct. And thus we can deduct it from the rest of the root and identify what the verb is. And examples are on page 238, right after the paragraph. You'll see alternate form with tau. From nasa'a, it becomes sa'at. You see that? First column and third column. First column is a call verb, third column is alternate form. Naga'a becomes ga'at. Nata'a becomes ta'at. See, so the first noon drops out because it's a weak consonant, and the tau is compensating for lost noon, but not at the beginning of the word, at the end. Okay? So that's where you will find it. And as soon as you'll see that tau, you have to assume there's probably noon that dropped out somewhere. First yod verbs, paragraph 20.6. The vowel pattern of these infinitives with tau is generally reminiscent of Zeglic nouns. So if you look at the page 239, you'll see a paradigm. Yashav is our verb in kal system, and then shevet is the infinitive construct. It's reminiscent of the Zeglic nouns. Okay, Yarash becomes reshet. Yalad, ledet. Yarad, redet. And so on and so forth. So as soon as you'll see that pattern of Zeglets, 2 in a row, those are called Zeglic nouns. Ones that have segol pattern. In this case, these are infinitive constructs. However, if you look at yada, yatsa, and halach, you'll see some changes in vowel patterns. Yada becomes da'at, or da'at. Then yatsa becomes tset. And then halach becomes lehet. So these are little unusual things. Kal infinitive with biconsonantal verbs. As we know from previous study of the biconsonantal verbs, they're divided into 3 classes based on the medial vowel letter. What are the biconsonantal verbs? Biconsonantal.
What are they?
What are they?
They have 2 consonants.
2 consonants, that's right. Regular verbs have 3 consonants. These have 2, and they have what is called materlecciones fill-ins in order to show this word with the 3 letters, okay? These are actual infinitive constructs. Cum, from come, it is actually infinitive construct, and that's how you'll find this word in your dictionary or lexicon, in the infinitive construct form. Most of the biconsonantal nouns, verbs, will be found in the lexicon as infinitive constructs, so that you will see what is the letter, medial letter, between the 2 consonants that is used as materlecciones. Cum, in this case, shurek is used. With holem vav, bo, we usually see it spelled either bet holem aleph or bet holem vav aleph. The verb is ba. So it doesn't have actually holem vav there, but it's given to us because it will reappear with different conjugations of the same verb. With hirek, such as sim, or it's a sim, the yod is a medial letter. So this will either drop out or reappear, and we have to know that this is a medial letter because if we'll encounter it in one of our conjugations, we'll have to identify it. Okay. How do we parse the infinitive construct? Since there's no person, number, and gender, we have to find out how we parse it. When parsing, we have to identify only a stem, conjugation, and lexical form. And how do we do that?